Hey y'all, welcome back to But Not All at Once, the podcast for people who hug when they should shake hands and shake hands when they should hug. I'm your host, Ann Smith, someone who did her very first publicing today, which I would say is the professional version of peopling. This is a post-pandemic situation in which I was faced with a room full of suit-wearing strangers for the first time in nearly a year and a half now. I have worked with clients one-on-one, media, news teams, colleagues. It was a whole different experience. I was both a zombie robot and a baby gazelle. I was deeply awkward, and I don't think any of you are surprised by this, but I'm genuinely delighted that you're here. After taking a week off to spend a truly memorable time at the beach with my family, I am back with an interview with Kristen Watson, a marketing executive, creative director, and dear friend of mine for years now. We have an episode lined up for you wherein we refer to Jessica Simpson and Britney Spears on a first name basis. We describe the night we saw The Notebook together and what a weeping disaster the theater was. We walk through falling prey to the marketing of Supergoop's hand screen sunscreen lotion for hands. We talk about body positivity, diversity, and acceptance, whether or not the COVID-15 expression should be eradicated, what is normal when it comes to our bodies versus normalized, the fact that authenticity isn't always rewarded in influencers, that Kristen had a mystery teen heartthrob boyfriend who was on set with Jessica Biel every day. He's not a mystery to me, and every time I see his face in cherished 90s and Y2K rom-coms, I want to kick him in the leg. We craft the perfect invitation disclaimer that you should include in every text or even hand calligraphed printed invitation for upcoming social gatherings that will tell people they will be accepted no matter what they look like. We miss you. Please come. We advocate for more walk dates. We talk about the fact that there are differing body expectations by city. There are deep thoughts on the images we saw growing up in the 80s, 90s, and aughts that really shaped our view of what beauty meant. How social media is doing good work in some ways to dismantle that, and obviously the ways that we wish social media would change. This episode is actually only half of our conversation. She and I dismantle the upcoming Victoria's Secret rebrand into VS Collective, and that will be going live on Patreon over the weekend. I don't know if you have felt that summer is rocketing by, but I appreciate all of your patience as I stepped back a bit. I'm looking forward to diving into the 10 billion topics we have coming up, including many from you. So many great things in store. But first, this episode, wherein you will hear Kristen and me being just Kristen and Ann. You might hear us talk over each other. You're going to hear me say like more than I prefer, because something inside me reverts to my 21-year-old self when I get together with friends, even remotely, who've known me since that time. I am deeply grateful not only for Kristen's friendship, but also that her birthday gift to me is going to the Friends experience. In fact, as you listen to this episode, I might be on the Central Perk set in Atlanta. Evidently, it's on tour. It's basically a rock star, and I am, as the kids would say, chuggy enough as an elder millennial to 100% go. There may be hokey t-shirts involved. Please stand by for more details. I can't wait to chat with you more. Patreon folks, there is a completely separate piece of this that will be on Patreon, and I'll also teach you how to load the new podcast episodes that exist only in Patreon on your regular iPod. No, that's not a thing anymore. On your regular Apple Podcasts app. If you are not on Patreon for $3 a month, we will be getting extra content, new monthly episodes, and starting in the fall, some virtual hangouts. That's patreon.com/butnotallatonce. I do want to give you a disclaimer that Kristen and I can only speak for ourselves. We are two white women with the privilege of not having grown up in a body that was marked by medical professionals or mocking peers as being excessively large or morbidly obese. We talk about things from our own worldview, still having grown up with body image, dysmorphia, disorders. those are things I think we need to address regardless of our size or background. But I do want to acknowledge that there are other voices we want to bring into this conversation, voices who have lived in larger bodies, voices who have felt a different life experience than we have. There's so much to discuss, and there are many, many hours in the year. We're going to get to all of them. But today, here's a discussion of pop culture, marketing strategy, body image, me being a generally awkward person, and why Kate Winslet is owed a million apologies by both the entertainment industry and the journalists who slandered her name in the 90s. Take a listen. I am so excited to be here with Kristen Watson, one of my very favorite people, someone with whom I'm going to see the set of Friends very soon, and I'm more excited about that than I should probably admit in the company of other adults. Like, that's the most millennial thing ever, is wanting to sit on a faux orange sofa in a faux Central Perk in a city that never even housed any of the sets.
Any of these things. What do you think are our odds of Jen surprising us? I know she's done that before in this little traveling.
I just feel like Atlanta's not the place to hang out in the middle of summer.
I agree. I know. I think our chances are slim, but I'm going to keep my fingers crossed.
I mean, I'll take it. I would be excited if literally, some guest star that only I would remember pops in. That would be exciting. I cried during the reunion. It's a lot. It's a lot.
I did. I did.
So here we are to discuss not just Friends, although I think Friends, Ally McBeal, Dawson's Creek, all of those shows probably affected our visual aesthetic of what was cool and cute and normal and acceptable, even in the terms of how women should look in the 90s and the early aughts. We are here to discuss a laundry list of things about a time period that was super formative for us that we still have a great deal of nostalgia for. But with parent glasses on, I realized, whoa, that was deeply troubling and unhealthy. So what started to jump out for you over time as you moved away maybe from romanticizing the exact measurements of a Courtney Cox or the slip dresses or insanely low-rise pants of,
oh my gosh,
Brittany and Christina, courtesy of, around the time of college. Where did things start to pop up for you as,
First of all, let's get a round of applause for all of us who attempted those looks in the early aughts. Because, it was really a badge of courage to come home and have your pants still intact, up where they're supposed to be. But jumping back to what you just said about putting on the parent, kind of looking at it through the parent's lens or the parent's glasses, I was thinking about this earlier because I knew we were going to chat about this tonight. And I was thinking, Victoria's Secret's in the news right now. They're going through a rebrand. There's lots to say about that. But in the meantime, our only exposure in the 90s, the time frame you just referenced, was a catalog that came in the mail, and all mom had to do was toss it, and that was that. They were out of our face. Girls of 14, 15 today, it's everywhere because
it never stops.
It never stops. You always have some screen in front of you showing you those things. It's like that episode of Sex and the City where Carrie is talking about how models are safely confined to billboards and magazines in most places, but in New York they run wild on the streets.
It's so true. And I think there's so many disclosures that have become necessary in modern communications and social media in particular, where there's a little indication most of the time on Instagram. If you use a filter in your stories, people disclose if their words are sponsored or they should. And so you have some sense of, okay, not everything is 100% as it seems, and we need to go back into that because there needs to be a lot more disclosure and honesty. Particularly think about the Aerie brand of swimsuits and how they stopped airbrushing. And I kind of want to compare and contrast that with Victoria's Secret. But I'm saying that only because your brain holds on to things longer than mine does. So hold on to that. And let's get back to the fact that when I looked at magazines like YM and 17, I would see, a Kate Moss and think, oh, her hair was super short 2 months ago. Look how fast it grew. I genuinely thought these people were super human.
The Noxema girl always got me. I remember an ad where she was, I don't know, playing volleyball or something maybe. And she had that tight stomach that I'm sure she has a lovely stomach, and I'm sure she had some help. And, I was a child who blossomed really early and started to develop curves a year or two probably before any of her female class classmates, it was really the heroin chic phase, especially, was super hard and informative, like you said, because that's all we saw. That's all we saw on TV. That's all we saw in magazines.
It was relentless. I remember people like Ally McBeal, and not just Ally McBeal, but pretty much everyone on that cast.
Yep.
Courtney Cox and Jennifer Aniston, and by contrast, Jennifer Aniston looked a little fuller figured. It's too strong a word, but a little bit more normal, than Courtney. Yeah. But she was quite, if we saw any of these people in real life, we would be like, whoa, you are a tiny little waif of a thing. But the aesthetic of Fiona Apple and Kate Moss, and then moving away from that time period. Again, Cindy Crawford and her counterparts were in no way even a normal BMI. Like, they were very aspirational. But you didn't see their hip bones. Right. It was not considered a goal to have 3-inch divots above and below your collarbone. And suddenly, right in the time where, because I was your counterpart who was a late bloomer and deeply awkward and uncomfortable around that. So I was shaped like a boy for a really long time. And then all of a sudden, right when it was super cool, I wasn't anymore. And that is like just... And I've tried talking to Bradley about this, because he's like, I don't understand. It wasn't, I think some people are just more prone to struggle with body image issues. And I even get some DMs, and I can usually pinpoint, and this isn't age shaming, but people who are either a little bit older than us or a fair bit younger, like growing up in a generation now that has a bit more positivity around body shapes of all kinds. There are a couple of listeners who are a little bit older than me who will message me straight up like, you have to get over this, when I share content about our bodies should be instruments, not ornaments, or we should be so thankful for what our bodies have carried us through and what they can do, and just try to enjoy that today, because to them, this has never been an issue.
Right.
To which I say, freaking hallelujah for you. That's amazing.
That's wonderful for you. It's not that we are dwelling on or lamenting this part of our development. We're kind of examining it because we enjoy pop culture and media criticism, and we enjoy kind of looking back at that time period now because we're so much older and wiser, and we can say,
with a great deal of sympathy for our 14-year-old selves.
Exactly. And so this is what was happening at that time. And oh my gosh, how different would we be today if we had the privilege of social media to show us more than just what a few executives around a table decided that we were going to see.
But we also would have needed blinders and really strict controls, so we only saw the good things.
This is true.
That would be, I remember, and I think I've mentioned this on some body image pep talk before, but I'm 5'9". When I was in high school, the only person, when women would talk about their weight in the media, who would talk about her weight, above 120 was Gabby Reese, who I think is like 6'1", maybe 6'2". And she said she was 140 pounds.
Yep. I definitely remember this.
And I remember feeling like, wow, she is so brave. That is really, really brave.
140 pounds.
Of muscle, of an Olympian.
And by the way, that is the peak weight of Bridget Jones in the Bridget Jones Diary, the first one. When she's journaling, when she, how she logs her weight every day at the peak in the movie, and she goes, 140 pounds. And I remember thinking, no.
That's so, and actually I find it really freeing now when fitness and fashion influencers don't necessarily say their weight or their highest weight or their lowest weight, or even sometimes their size. Like, I ordered one size up from usual or 2 sizes down or whatever, because sometimes I do think for a younger audience, it's going to be triggering.
Yeah.
I was 5'9", and people could tell me, oh, you're not supposed to be a size 2. Kate Moss is. She's probably a 0. She might be a double 0.
Like, how about
so don't tell me
literally every model?
I am an overachiever. Don't threaten me with a good time.
Don't threaten
I'm trying to meet an impossible goal.
Because
I will do it.
Because you'll find a way to do it. But it's crazy what we bought into as being the norm. I think it's interesting to kind of check ourselves and think, oh my gosh, and be honest for a second and say, gosh, when that picture of Jessica Simpson came out about at the Chili Fest, like
with the mom jeans.
with the mom jeans. And listen, the media told us that Jess had let herself go. I mean, it was everywhere. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, how embarrassing. And now, 15 years later, however long it is, I'm like, she looked amazing. Who told me that? You told me that was fat?
It was so ridiculous, too, because I know that 99% of the angry male trolls commenting on those stories, and probably some of the journalists, right? Quote unquote journalists, writing those stories looked like angry, like human, just garbage on legs.
Yeah.
Like just the way that after you live a long enough life, you can tell by looking at the resting countenance of someone, like happiness shines through your pores, or you look like you just finished sucking on 4 pounds of lemons. I feel like those people definitely look like they've been sucking on lemons, and Jessica did not deserve it. No. And anyone who hasn't read her autobiography.
Oh, yeah.
Not only did I cry, because I feel like she's our bestie who just doesn't know us, but also I love that she admitted she had a writer that she worked with, a ghostwriter. I find that incredibly refreshing. The writer's name was on the book. That very rarely happens.
Yep.
And she was painfully honest.
She was.
You
could hear the emotion in her voice. I actually listened. I think you told me to listen.
Yeah, I bought the hardback, and then Jessica was like, oh, we have some special treats for people who buy the audiobook, and everyone said it was so amazing. And I was like, well, good to know now. But I enjoy a hardback book. But for me, it confirmed everything that I, as an adult, look back and see from the 90s and the aughts.
Absolutely.
So I remember that second album she put out. I want to say I was like 18 or 19, and she put out that album where she was doing a lot of like leather corsets and mega low-rise pants and trying to dance.
Irresistible.
Yes. And that was where she sang later that they told her she needed to be 102 pounds.
Because Britney was popping.
Britney stripping off down to that glittery nude colored body. Yeah. I remember scream. I remember a hall full of girls screaming at that and at JLo's green Gucci Grammy dress.
Yes.
That was down to her navel, and now it's
it
not
was
even
Versace.
Versace.
It was Versace.
There we go.
But yes, that is one of the most iconic dresses of all time for sure.
And we were like, "Oh my gosh, are you allowed to do that?" She was also the first person. Remember, she had a big butt. That was a huge thing. Oh my gosh, it's so big. Look at Jay. First of all, as a woman who spent much of her life with a more shapely derriere than many other gals, it was very freeing to me. But also, I look back and I'm like, the girlfriend has an actual six-pack.
Right.
Like, talk about build a chick. This is someone with an insanely flat stomach and a small but remarkably taut backside. And
we're not celebrating. Yay. We're so like slightly imperfect all over.
Yes.
But no,
look how inclusive we are for deigning to include this woman who has no caffeine, no dessert, no alcohol, and hasn't for decades. You don't do that for funsies. You know what I mean?
No, you don't.
You do that because you want a six-pack at 52.
And you asked like a little bit earlier, when I think about like a turning point in the culture and us moving from what is being pushed upon us from Fifth Avenue to a more like realistic body image. And I think it's right around that time when, I hate to say it, but when Kim Kardashian became a celebrity for something
in her
very
own
real,
right.
In her own right, whether it was leaked or not. I mean, all of that aside, just the fact that all of a sudden we're vulnerable and we are very excited about getting a glimpse into someone's life. That's when, we shifted to reality TV. We had The Simple Life. We had Survivor was starting.
Remember Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire? That Joe, It wasn't Joe, it was like Joe Millionaire or something. And he was actually not a millionaire.
I remember Joe. Yes, I remember
Suddenly,
Joe Millionaire.
It was all reality TV and Kim was kind of that first. I mean, Paris and Nicole's Simple Life was a big deal, but Kim was the first where I think people were just interested in watching. They were aspiring to have a piece of that lifestyle with all of the brand partnerships it entailed.
Yeah. Well, at first, I think it was just aspiring to have her blessed
Physique.
figure, her physique. I know I was looking for a classy way
Her
to say
physique has, I mean, she has always been a beautiful girl.
Always.
But when I
always.
look at pictures of her with Paris before she was famous, I think,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I hope your girls look like that. And I hope they know that that's like slightly different, which is what makes it cool. It is super frustrating to see a thumbnail of a celebrity and not be able to tell if it's Larsa Pippen or no one looks like Meryl Streep. You know what I'm saying? No one looks like
Exactly.
Julia Roberts. It is
Exactly.
for a reason.
Right.
And I hate
100%.
that her girls might one day grow up and say, like, oh, I need to change this nose that my mom changed.
Yes, I know. I think about that too.
Because did you ever hear your parents say anything about like family features and think, oh, but that's literally what I look like? You know, my mom would always compliment me, be like, oh, I'm so glad you didn't get my blah, blah, blah. And I would grow up and be like, no, I definitely have that chin though. And
I'm so different from my mom. It's like, it's comical because
well,
she's
you and I,
5'10".
are the same way.
Yeah, yes, Louise is so...
My mom is
she's like a
Polly
little
Pocket
doll.
and
She's
red-haired,
Polly
and everybody was like, oh my gosh, your mom is so adorable.
It's like, oh, can I put
Hey,
her in
Ann.
my pocket and take her home?
You're here. I did get a lot of you're built like your dad because he's 6'4" and my mom is 5'3". But your mom is the opposite. So she is definitely, what is she,
5'10".
7 inches taller than you?
Yeah, I'm 5'3", so yeah, she's 7 inches taller than I am with the metabolism of a racehorse.
Offensive, rude, and hurtful.
Very offensive. So rude and hurtful.
It's hurtful to me, and I never expected to share her genes, but I don't like it.
I also expected one day maybe to borrow her shoes, but God made her a size 10 and me a size 7.5, so that's another
Well,
joke
it
he
happens.
played
I
on
mean,
us.
you need as my mom says, you need a firm foundation, Annie. That's why you're a size 9. You couldn't have tiny feet. Like, I guess that's true, but literally my shoe size was the same as my grade from 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade.
Gosh.
And in 9th grade, I was like, Lord, how far are we going to go with this? I think I went from 5'2" to 5'8" this summer between 8th and 9th grade. It was a physically painful process. Everyone I saw commented on it the moment I walked in the room, and I wanted to curl up in a ball. And also I wore size 9 shoes. But they have stayed the same size for decades now. So.
And that's wonderful. And the great thing is that, thank God, the media never gave us a complex about shoe size. And there are countries in the world where that is an issue, considered a positive female feature to have like teeny tiny feet.
I mean, I think there's always someone, and I say this as a lot of love to you, with someone who is, 6 inches shorter than me and much smaller feet. But like, there's always this girl who in high school who would be like, oh, I'm so small. You guys, I can't reach that. I can't get up there. Like, oh, and look how we have the same shoes on. Look how little my feet look next to yours.
No.
like, ma'am. No, we know we're aware. And but it all comes from the same place, right? This shame around I still struggle to stand up straight in photos with shorter friends, which are all of my friends. And the shame around being too sizable a person, taking up too much space, and the desire to bring up like, look how tiny I am. Look how little.
This is your sorority upbringing too, because I have not one picture of a group of sorority girls in which we are standing up tall with our shoulders back. We're always all hunched over each other. Like there's
Southern Living came to my client a few weeks ago. I spent 10 hours with them. And at the end of the day, we took a picture and one of them looked over at me and was like, were you in a sorority?
Can't hide it.
I didn't mean to. I was just trying to fit myself in the frame because I am significantly taller than even the dude next to me. I don't know how to do that. And that's one thing, we hear that the camera kind of makes people look larger than they are, so that celebrities will hear, wow, you're so much shorter, so much smaller than you look on TV. And I remember Chandler saying,
I know exactly what you're going to say. How many cameras were on you?
We have to address Fat Monica. And I put fat in italics, in quotations, with a very sarcastic font.
I am convinced they shaved some weight off her for this reunion. She was Definitely fatter than that, right? She had to have been.
That's not a joke. Like, that would fly. Friends is comfort food for me. I can watch it. I can have it on in the background. I can quote most lines and I still laugh at them. But there are some things where I will wince and say, ooh, that wouldn't go over today. Ooh, that shouldn't have been a thing people said.
100%.
That's an important realization that's developed over decades. But, jokes about fat and gaining weight and, Samantha Jones gaining 5 pounds that I still could never see on a big screen. I saw Sex and the City, the movie, on the big screen, and I still was like, I'm looking.
You pause it and you're like, what? And that little tiny little like bump that's on her belt that looks like maybe she had 2 glasses of wine on the plane instead of one. Like, I'm just like, no, I don't.
She got off a plane swollen because she's been flying in a metal tube through the air. Like,
yeah,
I know.
Yeah, no, I know. And we bought it. And you know what? I look back and I think at those storylines, why? What's the purpose of that? Like, if you're thinking about it in the context of the greater story, like, why?
Lazy comedy. Fully, same for Fat Monica.
You're right.
This was why you were unlikable. No one can believe it. Look how great you look now. Now you're this worthwhile person.
Is this our equivalent? Is this like the female equivalent of like the bathroom joke for men? Like, it's low-hanging fruit. It's easy.
It's just a trope that is funny across the ages because, heaven forbid, anyone's body change.
Right.
Or not be appealing to everyone at all times. I was reading something today that talked about, and I was going to share it, but I was like, am I going to get more DMs about like, you need to move on. Just don't think about your body. That's what I do. But it talked about the struggle that people have when they make changes in their life or their body changes because of medicine or whatever. And people will say, oh, have you been working out? Like you look so great now. And it's that now. Right. Or my roommate telling me like, Anne, you look really pretty in this picture. Thank you.
It's the opposite of saying you look really tired. Like, that's how we say.
It's this whole thing that like, even though it's a compliment in some way, it just reinforces the idea that you're constantly being examined.
100%.
So you're walking into a room and you're being evaluated. This time people commented on it because it was a good thing. Sometimes they'll comment if they say you look tired. But for the other part, I remember coming back from work after having my first baby and I lost all the weight and then some really quickly. That was just a thing that happened to me the first time and was kind of false advertisement for postpartum for me the other 3 times. But I remember men saying things to me even. Like, and it was meant so kindly and with such good intention, but it was super weird. Like, but y'all talked about this? Oh, everybody has been like, whoa, have you seen Anne? It's like she never even had a baby. And now I'm like 28-year-old Anne, take it and run with it.
See, the thing about this is there's no great way to there's no great lesson to teach your child in something. It's like, don't compliment them and say they look great for having just no, but it's like, if you boil it all down to the 5-second or 5-minute rule, it's like, which I try to teach my children. It's like, if you're going to comment on someone's person, if it's not something they can fix in 5 seconds or 5 minutes, like, you don't bring
Flush
it up.
We're
teeth,
talking, get the dog poop out of that, your hair, whatever.
Yeah, your dog poop out of your hair.
I don't know. I was going for bird poop, but
I just say toilet paper on the shoe. Like,
it's a more likely possibility. I would say maybe you spilled some tacos. I don't know what happened. I live a wild and crazy life. You wouldn't understand. We have a feral existence. But I think the point holds, and I remember Oprah talking about this a long time ago, and I think that I appreciate comedians and commentators who keep this in mind, which is she felt comfortable commenting on choices that people made, not things that they were born with. So you dyed your hair 17 colors, it looks fried, you shaved half of it off, and you walk around and she wants to chuckle about it. I mean, we can still debate that, but that was a choice you made as opposed to like the shape of your body. Or you just had an affair on your 5th wife and you've now conceived, 9 kids in the last 18 months or whatever. That's something we can laugh at. But I've actually had a discussion with a couple of my kids about punching down where, kids are younger than you. Kids don't know as much as you, and we never want to make ourselves or other people feel better at the expense of folks who are younger or weaker or still learning or don't have what you do. And
Absolutely.
life choices, really, honestly, what I want to teach my kids is if it bothers you that much, don't look.
Right. So why didn't we, that's great advice for ourselves at 15, right? Like it's the Victoria's Secret catalog bothers you that much, don't
I
look.
mean, except it didn't bother me. It didn't
Except it
bother me at
didn't,
all. It
no.
captivated me and made me think, okay, this is what we're supposed to look like. This is what is celebrated. And now I need to look that way.
And very intelligent brand noticed that 15-year-olds were having those thoughts. And that's when the brand Pink was launched. And then we have more aggressive marketing at a younger audience, specifically to instill that idea of beauty perfection early.
Being adorable, dancing around in tiny pink underwear and
danceable. Yeah, we're sexy, but not. We're sweet still because we're young, but we're collegiate. We have fun, but not too much. It's the feminine ideal that has been, celebrated by the media since the 90s. It's why Jessica and Brittany were constantly pitted against each other, because Jessica had been open about the fact that she was saving herself for marriage. But, Brittany hadn't said anything of the sort, but she was climbing the charts. They sure
never stopped asking her, though, did they?
Sure, no, never stopped asking her. And then Jessica was pressed to be more sexy, and she's like, I can't be everything, I just want to be me.
It's so unnecessary to me, too, when I go back and look. Well, a couple of things. First of all, folks who study fashion, like for a living, whether from a historical or kind of a sociological perspective, they look at post-war time, what that means after a recession. What do you see in hemlines? What do you see in the shapes of garments?
About the history of polka dot.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Elwood.
Honestly,
she aced it.
Deeply fascinating. Even before Reese got involved, World War II, and the hopefulness of these fabrics and the angst of flannel and baby doll dresses or combat boots. One of the things they have found is that in the late 90s and early aughts in particular, the ultimate accessory was not an accessory, it was your body. So fashion wasn't really about fashion. It was about Keira Knightley being able to show a full 20 inches of torso. Those pants that she wore on the red carpet, you could very nearly get a pap smear done, probably, from what was available. And, all the way up the rib cage. It was just putting your person on display.
One of the biggest trends I've noticed from some Chanel pieces, but particularly Dior's fall 2021 runway show, is semi-transparent clothing. And several, including one dress that I swear had to have been designed with the inspiration of Britney Spears at that 2000 MTV with the nude stocking with the crystals all over. I'm telling you, it's that moment at the end of that dance where she's like, oops, I did it again. Boom. And she hits that mark. It's like you made that into a gown. Dior put that on the runway. So just saying.
Well, great. It's perfect timing because Britney is having a renaissance.
You said, well, great.
I mean, what am I going to do about it? I want Britney to get all the accolades and all of the retroactive credit she can. I have no desire to, nor do I really have an appropriate venue to wear, I would say, a semi-transparent dress.
No, but it looked beautiful on the runway at the Galleria wherever they
I'm
were.
sure it did. And I just spent some time with a friend from home who lives in New York City, and we were discussing the difference between body expectations in the South and body expectations in Manhattan, which you would imagine would be very forward-thinking and ahead of the times. And I think in some ways, big cities are still kind of a stalwart for expecting the most. You can tell how wealthy someone is by how thin they are.
Exactly. As opposed to, full-figured women at first became popular because it was a sign that they were childbearing, that they
had enough to feed themselves.
They had enough to feed themselves and their children, likely.
They were also very fair because they didn't have to go outside in the sun.
You're right. Like Scarlett was very, very nervous when Rhett noticed that she had been riding without her gloves, but she had really been working in the fields. We have to have hands that are not tan.
I did buy the Supergoop hand. What is it called? I can't remember, but it's an SPF lotion specifically for hands. And,
you would buy it.
And Bradley was like, are you out of your mind? Well, I bought it with the intention of keeping in the center console of my car because for the most part, I sunscreen up in the morning, but if it's during the school year, I don't really go that many
But
places
and
outside.
what could potentially be different though about hand
It's lotion,
sunscreens
Kristen.
and
It's lotion, and
they're all
I will
lotion.
not be told otherwise.
Okay. You fall victim to our profession.
Yes, and that what's painful is that I'm more aware of it. Because for those of you who don't know, Kristen and I met in grad school where we studied advertising, marketing, public relations, and kind of the blending of those three styles of communication, which just makes it that much more embarrassing when we fall for that kind of branding. But it is a really great product. I probably won't buy it
It
again.
is.
I'll
Okay.
probably just squeeze some SPF into a tube of hand lotion.
Or just grab the regular copper tone pink bottle and put that on your hand.
It's just, and that's another discussion for another day when we talk
Yeah, we'll
about
talk
beauty
about yeah.
expectations. But the whole, your hands, your neck, and your chest show age first, even
It's
if you get
true.
a facelift.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're terrified I'm terrified of the sun because the girls burn as though you have actually greased them up and fried them. But there's a difference between I want to keep my skin healthy and I am desperate to have the hands they can't be any older than 30. I can't have 50-year-old hands.
Thank goodness the self-tanning sensation like it is today was not. I don't remember being obsessed. I mean, I remember being on summer vacation and like wanting a nice tan and making it and thinking it made me look skinnier. But like, I don't think there was a tan obsession like there is today. And I could be wrong.
I think there was more of a pop in a tanning bed and get a base tan. Remember when we thought that was a thing?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My base tan is always just going to be like a sheer lobster red. Evidently, any tan at all is evidence that the DNA in your skin is damaged. So,
exactly.
Wear your sunblock, put on your big hat and your beach tan and all the things.
And Ashley Graham self-tanner. Ashley Graham, who I love and we love, her particular brand of self-tanner is my favorite. So.
I have not tried it. I do love her, and I love the movement towards women like Ashley and like Hunter McGrady. But I think there needs to be, most of the women who are above probably a size 6 in fashion have a certain shape. Still a pretty hourglass shape, which is fine and beautiful.
You mentioned earlier the trend towards not stating particular sizes. I think, that kind of equates to, hey, let's shut off how many likes an Instagram picture has gotten. Like the numbers don't freaking matter. Like, does it fit properly? And, brands have done vanity sizing. We know what that is. Or, there's an emotional benefit to making the customer feel like, ooh, I can wear a 2 in this. I'm going to buy that one.
Except for the fact that you can literally never buy anything online.
Right.
I know if I'm buying anything from a new boutique, I'm just going to size up because I don't want to have the meltdown.
That comes with it.
I remember I had a preemie and was grieving a miscarriage and a emergency surgery and all these horrible things that had happened in like the previous year and a half. And it was a really terrible time. I couldn't keep weight on. That was not a normal thing for me. All these people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just had your 3rd baby. You look so incredible. And I was like, cool. It takes me everything to get out of bed, but I appreciate it. And I tried on my normal size Banana Republic cocktail dress for this event I had to go to. And I couldn't get the zipper to zip above my rib cage because my ribs had expanded. Although little fathead had left 6 weeks early, he still was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stretch out just side to side.
Kick a few ribs out while I'm up here.
We used to joke that he thought there was some kind of an escape hatch because he kicks the same spot
kick it
over and over. And I was like, sir.
Don't you talk about my boyfriend that way. He's super
Get it together. I was so glad he was moving. It was such a horrible time. But I remember thinking,
little choppers.
Okay, this expanded rib cage is not going to hold us down. We're fine. Everything's fine. But I look at women like Ashley Graham and like Hunter McGrady, who I think had a baby just like a week or so ago. And I think if I was a plus size woman who wasn't hourglass proportioned, that would probably be hard. And I don't know if you know Gronk's, so Mac is super into his girlfriend.
Love. Oh my
Camille?
gosh, I love them. Yes, Camille is amazing. I think she actually got her like big break for the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, and she was considered like plus size, I think, when they cast her years ago.
She is a full size 6. Oh yeah,
She's
she is.
gorgeous.
She's beyond
Is it
gorgeous.
Camille Kostek, yeah.
In the world of modeling, essentially, if you're above a 2, you need to be like a 10. Because we kind of have no real use for
There's
you.
no middle ground, right?
And a size 10 is not plus size, but it will model plus size fashions. Because, we don't want to see
how
a
many
size
cameras
18.
are on you.
Right. We are uninterested in looking at that. So I have always thought that lauding her on the cover of Sports Illustrated, which, the cover of Sports Illustrated is another thing we need to unpack another day, but as a movement for our culture, when in fact in any other world, she would be, as a woman who's probably 5'8", slim. Doesn't really add up. So I guess what I'm unpacking here is the idea that everything we thought we left in the 90s is still here a little bit. Kate Winslet on Titanic, the media fully had me believe that she was so overweight. It was very gracious of James Cameron to give her that part at all.
It was very gracious. They just forgot to finish the sentence with, compared to those before her. Yeah, she's bigger and different, but compared to it's all relative as we continue to evolve. And I think social media has given us the privilege of seeing more than one type of beauty. And that's something I think that we can be grateful for. Believe me, I can there's a laundry list of things I don't love about social media, and I can talk for another hour
about. But you have the ability to pull back.
Anymore.
Yes.
We can pull back.
Far more than other people do. Which, is that helped or hurt by the fact that your friend Anne sends you what she thinks you should see on social media? So you might not technically be there. But you're still
as a marketing professional, I have to stay plugged in, and I'm, a pop culture expert because look who has me as a guest on their podcast as an expert. I have to stay plugged in. I have to know what's going on. I have to know, what apps are hot and how we're monetizing them and all of those things. But I don't actively put content out there about my life.
Right.
And the thing you were just mentioning about getting the pants to zip up or the dress to zip up after you had your baby, I remember thinking, and I'm not proud to admit this, but I remember thinking, okay, like at a certain amount of time, I want to make sure I can post a picture that proves I got back into jeans that zip. Right. And I need to post that because it'll make me feel, validated.
And look how amazing, aspirational, look how full of worth I am. That is where a tremendous amount of worth comes. And I remember it was kind of a revolutionary concept for the time, but I worked at this ad agency in Columbia, and I worked with this woman who was not a ton older than us, although at the time it probably felt it. I was like 24 and she was 31. But she had just had her second baby, and she was telling me that one thing she really tried not to do when she saw friends who just had a baby was comment on their appearance. And she said, if people post pictures, I will say, you look so happy, or how can you look so rested? Like, you girls are beautiful. Which, by the way, I think you look beautiful usurps all other compliments, or even better, you are beautiful. That is not tied to someone's actual. I feel like a beautiful person at this age far more than I did when I was perhaps more physically youthful.
I totally agree. I feel the same way. And I feel like, didn't you either write a blog post or do an Instagram video about things to say that are complimentary to your friend that have nothing to do with their appearance?
Yes, I did. And I think
I remember that.
It's tough to implement because we love our people and we want them to feel good
you
about
look
themselves.
So cute.
Right. Or look at you, little Polly Pocket. Like, oh my goodness, you look so tiny in that dress, which is a compliment where we come from. But maybe one day it won't be.
Why do we default to that?
I know. It's such a challenge. Even when you know better, even when you're fighting the powers that be, right? You just, I find that saying anything, you are gorgeous. I'm so happy to see your beautiful face. But I love that reminder from my friend just when she was in that postpartum phase of, you look happy. She's so smitten with you. look like she's found the sweet spot, like right under your chin.
Like, you must be so proud of yourself. Like,
Right.
what an
Look what you've
amazing.
done. So I love the idea of complimenting how people are who they are more than just how
Yeah.
they look.
Or how they're making you feel,
Right.
It's like, oh gosh, like, I'm so happy to see you. I've been thinking about you. Like, how are you? I'm so happy to have this moment with you.
And everything I have read indicates that people are almost afraid to see folks again in real life post-pandemic, not just because of the way they look, although I think that's a lot of it. I mean, most of us don't know
Yeah, you're right.
what to wear. Very few of us look exactly like we did or better than before. Most of us don't really know how to make small talk. Many of us,
You're
including
right.
myself, when asked, like, how are y'all doing? What have you been up to? Surviving? Is that a bad answer? Like, I
Right.
don't know.
Yeah. Like, during the pandemic, I had developed a hobby of painting bottle caps. So I'm spending a lot of time doing that.
I learned a whole new language. Speak to me in Mandarin
Right.
exclusively.
You're right, though. There's a lot of anxiety around reentry, I guess, for lack of a better term. I think that's another discussion too. It's, that's a real thing. That people have been given every opportunity and license to crawl back in this shell that they have when they're feeling vulnerable. And now we're trying to coax everyone out of the shell. And some people don't want to come out. And I'm not sure. I mean, I've been back in the office since August, I think. Still there's the birthday parties and book clubs and happy and things that are starting to pop up again. And it's like, I kind of like being at my house.
And I would love there to be a disclaimer at the bottom of every invitation that says, do not buy something new to wear to this party.
Yes.
We don't care what you look like. We don't care if your old pants don't zip. We don't care if you haven't colored your hair in 2 years. We miss you. Please come. Put on a baseball cap. Put on your softest, longest maxi dress that feels like a nightgown. And let's sit in rocking chairs and talk, because
See, I
that's
think we
all
should
we
make
need.
this invitation exactly and put it on Etsy, because
There we
people
go.
will buy it and say, yes, this is exactly what I want to say to my friend that I couldn't verbalize. And this is exactly what I want my friends to hear.
Well, I
And
have no trouble verbalizing pretty much anything, actually. So y'all
yes,
call
I
me.
know.
Y'all call me at any point. And I want to tell you, friends, like, if I ask you to I think we need to have more walk dates, because a lot of us are still in a situation where school or work is a little different than it was 2 years ago, for instance. And we want to get out of the house and have a social conversation where we move a little bit. What if we took a walk at 7 a.m. before it became hotter than
Love
the
it.
depths of hell? What if we did that at 7 p.m., and let our
Yeah,
kids stay home and watch a movie or something? What if we approached
exactly.
socializing a little bit differently? And
Yeah.
what if we all unlearned all of these messages together? For instance, for me, it was Kate Moss, Kate Winslet, Fiona Apple, and friends. For someone else, it might have been, their big sister, who looked totally different to them and was constantly compared to them. I'm trying to think of who else. And pretty much everyone.
I have kind of a unique perspective on this too, because when I was 16, I was dating an actor in Hollywood who was a teen actor who was
I want to punch him
on
in the
set
throat every
with,
time I see him on screen.
I know, me too, kind of, but like, he was on set with Jessica Biel every day. And so if just seeing Jessica Biel on TV on Seventh Heaven didn't give you a complex about your body, like, how about your boyfriend works with it? That's a whole other issue. But I know, I totally agree. I was thinking about too, there was a storyline going back to, and why the hell was it even necessary? I'm sorry, I don't know if I can say hell,
You'll be
but
all right.
why was it necessary? There was a storyline in Desperate Housewives where Eva Longoria's character was supposed to be getting fat. This was like toward the end. And her stylist brings a dress and he's like, they only had a 0, and he goes to zip it up and like it wouldn't zip up. And he's like, it won't zip. And she was like, and she looks at him and she goes, I wear 00. And
I
I
mean,
remember that scene. Like, I can remember that. Like, it seared into my body. I'm like, I will never be a double zero.
I
Like,
mean, and
ever.
I was not, I want to be really clear as I say this. I'm not saying that I was subjected to horrible body shaming or mocked because I was obese. I was a slim, late blooming middle schooler. Very late blooming, to the point that in a thing that would not be accepted today, a group of boys called me Tic Tac Girl, because evidently that was all that was happening above my rib cage. By the way, if I thought a group of middle school boys had noticed my daughter above the rib cage, much less commented to her about it, they wouldn't have graduated from MIT and Emory and Georgia Tech and gone on to be like psychiatrists and engineers, because they would be 6 feet under and I would have zero qualms. Hear that? Hear that, Rach. But also know that I tried on a pair of size 0 jeans when I was in the 7th grade, and they did not zip, based purely on my bones, which hadn't even really widened yet. And my dad laughs because he said I came out of the dressing room and threw this pair of jeans at him and said, "Dad, these were so tight, I couldn't even get them to zip not on me." And I was like so mad that my hands were shaky, so I couldn't like zip and button them. And I'm an Enneagram one, like a rule following, one of zip and fold and button and do all the things. And I was ready to set them on fire. And now I look at the measurements for a size 0, and I know what my girls, whom I just had to measure at 5 and 9 for bathing suits and leggings and stuff, I know their waist measurements. And I said something to my husband. And our 2 daughters are only about half an inch apart in waist size, because you grow a good bit between 5 and 9. And my husband was like, "These numbers can't be right. My 9-year-old has a 24-inch waist." And I was like, "Yeah, that's a size 8, like a little girl's 8. You know, we probably just need to buy her like an 8 for these leggings, and maybe a 10 in a bathing suit, so it's got lots of room. You want to size up." And he was like, 24, don't you? Why does that feel? And I realized in that moment, how many times have you heard 36, 24, 36?
Oh my gosh.
And my very, very typical daughters at 5 and 9 are within a half and a quarter of an inch of that number.
Stop it.
And so I was
Nelly's dictating what he's supposed to think. I cannot, no, we can't equate these two.
Isn't it unthinkable? And so I was like, here's the thing.
Oh, I think it was 25 though. Measurements with 36, 25, 34.
But that was like the old like beach song, 36, 24, 36.
Oh,
like
you're
beach
right.
music. Yeah.
Immediately I went to, that's Miss Grace. Okay. So Miss Grace and Nellie had the same idea.
I mean, it's Nellie at least modernized it a
must
smidge.
Be the money.
This is so funny though, because when you said Nellie, I was like, is she talking about the mean girl on Little House? That's where my head's at. And Nellie is 2/3 of my workout playlist, so we should acknowledge that. But I just want to say,
25, 35.
That's where it's coming from decades ago. That's where,
decades ago. Mean Girls told us that if you were above a 5, you had to shop at Sears. She's like, it won't zip. It's a 5. We only carry sizes 1, 3, and 5. You could try Sears.
Regina / absolute image of perfection, Rachel McAdams, supposedly gains 3 pounds or wants to lose 3 pounds. And this is a thing, like, are we going to act like you can't just drink a couple gallons of water and
they put her in
live
that
your
puffer
life?
Coat. They put her in that puffer coat and smear that chocolate all over her face to try to make her look fat. And then it's like hot body on the chalkboard, and she crosses it off. I'm like, wait, what do you mean you destroyed her hot body? You just put her in a puffer jacket.
It's fine. It's like Rachel Lee Cook taking off her glasses and she's all that, and suddenly she's hot. Take off the puffer and she'll be fine.
Take off the puffer jacket.
I mean, good grief. Did you see her in The Notebook? We were both like, we are signing up for grad school ballet because this chick is who we need to be.
There's a separate Notebook episode. Holy,
did I send you the episode from the Popcast about the Notebook?
Yes,
it was so great. We do have a lot to dive into. We will record a Patreon episode on the Notebook, and probably on Mean Girls, because those are forever linked in my mind. Rachel McAdams really kind of stepped into her own. And the guy on the podcast, Knox, he just heard like a low moan of weeping at the end. And I was like, well, you were not in my theater, because I remember we went out to dinner and met people, which included my future husband.
Yes.
I was stone cold sober, but deeply dehydrated on account of all the weeping. And I felt absolutely punch drunk when we got, I felt,
Yes,
I
I
had been
remember
through an
that.
emotional roller coaster.
I remember I'm like, this is the first time I'm meeting these lovely people. And I usually don't look like a busted spider with these black marks on my face from this mascara. But yeah, that was
I was traumatized. So it was pretty clear that whatever quote unquote weight gain had happened in Mean Girls had not stuck around.
Yeah,
but
carried over.
I have heard the expression COVID-15 from healthcare professionals.
I've used that.
I wish that we could all just drop that pretense. I don't know how much weight I've gained. I no longer have a scale, which is just better for me, but my doctor knows. And I was like, hey, will you holler if something becomes a problem? That'd be so great. Thanks. Because it's really freeing for me not to think about it. But for people to joke about it on a cultural level, it brings us back, I think, to that space.
I don't know if people are joking about it so much as saying like, well, you know what? Actually, it is, because it's kind of a reference to the freshman 15. And like, you let yourself go. It's kind of an implication. Like,
sure, it was our first year in quarantine. Yeah, I'll give you that.
Let yourself go. But it's not about letting yourself. I think that's where the discrepancy is. It's like when you're a freshman, if you're a freshman 15, it means you like dropped all the good parts of your life that you were, spending your spare time studying, running, and now you're drinking beer with frat boys or whatever. And yeah, some of us had fun in quarantine.
I agree. And at the same time, when I talk to our kind of a resident intuitive eating expert, and she tells me that it's not a matter of willpower or control or letting yourself go, but letting your body and your heart survive something no one has seen before. And I'm like, okay, no, I like that. I like that interpretation a little bit better. I don't think Naomi Campbell would agree, but I'm here for it. And I'm here for the changing landscape of social media. For instance, Lizzo, who is not a Kate Moss, talking about how she is a vegan, showing her workouts.
Don't we love Lizzo?
Obsessed, except Jillian Michaels evidently talks about how it's all going to be great for Lizzo until she gets diabetes. Take several seats, ma'am. We can talk about, actually my doctor and I had this discussion last time I was there. And, there were some times I wish I hadn't gotten on the scale when I was super sad years ago and thought this is my new normal. No. And she was like, so we have all of these health improving activities, which is what intuitive eating calls health promoting behaviors. And if you are lifting weights, if you are taking walks with your kids, swimming in the pool, if you are drinking all the water, if you are eating more vegetables, I can get you to stop doing some of those things and see you lose 7 pounds in a couple months, but not of good weight. And what I would rather see is a cholesterol panel that looks nice and blood pressure that's under control. And
is losing weight always the gain? It's like, Is that the goal?
It is. Culturally, it really is.
Culturally, it is. But what if that girl that stepped on that scale and had that same moment, what if she had grown up in an area where she had access to content that featured BB Rexha dancing around in a bathing suit and proclaiming that she weighs 165 pounds and we need to normalize it,
Which, I think it's aspirational. I didn't, but I think if you look at the statistics, and these might be 10 to 20 years old by now, but I know when I was in college, the average American woman was somewhere around 5'3" or 5'3.5", and the average weight of the American woman was like 163, 165. So
why do we need to normalize it when it was already normal?
But it wasn't appreciated. It wasn't normalized.
It wasn't appreciated. It wasn't normalized. It was normal, but it wasn't normalized.
Exactly.
It was normal. It wasn't what the industry wanted us to see.
And even now we see fitness and, I want to punch Kylie Jenner squarely in the mouth every time I see her doing like a appetite reducing lollipop or a flat tea tummy. Bam. Forbes says you're a billionaire, whether you are or not. There's no debate that you're not worried about next month's rent. Can we just call that diarrhea tea what it is?
Yeah. Can we have a conscience and just be like, listen, girls, I don't know if they work, but it's pretty snazzy packaging and it won't kill you. So let's give it a try.
And they give me $1 million.
And you know what? That would probably get more engagement than anything. I think they should send us a check right now.
People would be so impressed that she admitted it. It's just a different approach. And that's okay. Authenticity isn't always rewarded. And I understand that. I see that, but I don't celebrate it. So I wish for continued growth for influencers who show themselves in different lights.
You're right. And I think what you're speaking to is the integrity of the influencer is so important. You have to feel like you really are getting that glimpse into their true life. I think that is part of why I'm so skeptical about this Victoria's Secret rebranding is I feel like, and for those of your followers who might not know that Victoria's Secret has taken a pivotal. You actually talked about this already on a podcast.
Just a little bit. And actually, let's tell folks. No, you're fine. So let's tell folks, wandering as this may have been, we're going to pause here and continue this discussion on Patreon. You just got to spend an hour with one of my favorite people on earth, and I hope that you were able to make sense of our giggling, liking, talking over one another, of just a sneak peek, an eavesdrop into a typical hour with us. If you're on Patreon, you can listen to our more nuanced Victoria's Secret discussion about the collective that they have, women who will evidently not be modeling the clothes, but who will be providing a voice as the brand hopes to shift from a male gaze to a female gaze. We dive into what that means, why I think they're trying to check a list of appropriate and or necessary people to have on that panel, what we hope and or expect from them, and whether or not we should expect anything from brands or we should just vote with our dollars. All of that is coming this weekend, and next week we have a really powerful story with an upstate South Carolina family and a book to go along with it that she has graciously gifted us to give away to a listener. So please come back, and in the meantime, apply your hand sunscreen, drink your water, get your rest. Ignore society's beauty standards. Remember, you are a genuinely gorgeous human, not because of the way you look, and just take good care. I'll talk to y'all then.